Those groups were set up just to last a year. One group has been together 3 years, one group's been together 2 years. Obviously they work and the people don't want to let these groups go. So how we structured it after the first year is that we have guest mentors. Well, because Mike BRUNS is such a nice man, I got him to do everything all in 1 week so that he could be done with me for at least a couple of years. So Mike came Monday night. We were down at Memphis Machinery and did a mentoring group and talked very candidly about owning a business. And I have to say that the emails I got from the participants said that it was the most meaningful group that they'd ever been to. And what I thought was really amazing is that everyone that I've talked to throughout the week had a different thing that Mike said that they took back, and it was never the same thing. So I think that we're in for a real treat. Mike found a contract in July of 1983. He's been in business for a long time. Talked about going from 3 trucks to what is it now, 700 trucks in several different cities, and has really grown this company. Is recognized in the industry and just professionally for all of his contributions. And I know Pat Lawler will say that Youth Villages wouldn't be Youth Villages the way it is today without the support of Mike BRUNS, so I'm sure he'll tell you a little bit about his philanthropic belief. But Mike BRUNS, thank you very much for doing this.
She makes me nervous with all those nice compliments. Thanks for coming. Welcome to 2track. Glad to have you. I appreciate the introduction, and yes, I might be done for a couple of years once I complete my 2 tasks, of which this is the second of the 2. First of all, I want to say, and I mentioned this on Monday, and I talked to the 2 people who were at that, I might, at the risk of repeating some of the things we talked about, because it's not that big a deal. So there's only so much to say, and I've been asked to talk about 20, 25 minutes. But what I don't want to do is give the impression that I'm an expert on small business. I'm not. I'm not an expert on anything. I'm very fortunate to have a business that's 21 years old, and it's humbling for me to speak to many of you, some of which are very successful in business and in life in general. So it's difficult for me to kind of talk to you all as though I'm the expert, so that's not the case. Having said that, as we begin to talk about some various subjects and I cover a couple things, you might want to jot down questions, because I am not going to be able to cover or answer every single thing or interest that you might have, and what might be interesting to someone in insurance might not have a world of anything to do with someone that's in a website. So please make sure that if we're able to create a dialogue here once I complete a couple of remarks. Usually when I do these things, I can learn by having you interact with me as much as I can ever teach. How many people in this room today own their own business or are head of their own business? Okay, that's a pretty good percentage. What I would like to do then, having seen that, is I might give some advice on what's happened with me in business. I'd like to talk about some of the success that we have had and why we've had it and why we haven't had some success. And then I would talk about some of the responsibilities that I think go along with some of that success. But first of all, when we're talking about people that are in business and starting a business, what they're going to do once they get rolling in their business, I think there's a couple points I wanted to make, and that was that so often people get in business, a lot of times it's because they don't like their boss, they're sick of listening to someone, they want to create their own hours, they want to make a lot of money, and I've listened to a lot of people come to me over the years and talk about all the wonderful reasons why they should get into business, most of which are kind of bogus, most of which are all the wrong reasons why someone should start a business. And if you start a business to satisfy some of those bogus reasons, you're going to end up on the unemployment line. Most businesses that fail, one of the biggest reasons is that people didn't do their research, they didn't do their homework. You'd be surprised how many times all of us sit around and listen to someone say, you know what I always wanted to do? I'll tell you what I'd like to do. And that's kind of cool. We all like to do a lot of different things, but so often people get in business because they'd like to do something and they've never done their homework. When I started 2track, I had 9 years in trucking. Didn't make me an expert by any means, and today I'll learn something more before the day is out as well. but at least I did have at least 9 years of background. And not only do you need to learn what goes on in our industry or your industry after 9 years, but you would learn who the contacts are, who the players are, and how it works. That would probably be the biggest. However, they say most businesses fail because of a lack of capital. And I've seen that numerous times, among competitors, quite frankly. And I'm glad of it. When I watch upstarts, and I think, he ain't got enough money, he's not going to make it. And I think that that's probably another big, it's not probably, it is the biggest reason that small businesses fail, is because all of us have gotten into something and we underestimated it. And the most recent one that I had years ago was building a house. If you're going to build a house and you got your budget figured and you're going to do the deal, it's going to cost about 50% more than you figured. And businesses are no different. So if you're ever in the realm where you're going to start a new business, or you're going to, people always ask me to get involved in businesses now because Comtrack is kind of a mature business. I don't like to get involved in things I don't know about, and I don't have a lot of money to just blow, but I do know that it takes a lot of capital to make a business work, because there's going to be a lot of mistakes. When you become self-employed, one of the reasons people get into being in business is they think that they won't have any bosses. They think that they're going to rule the roost. They think that they're going to finally have a deal where they can do whatever they want. And I must tell you that after 21 years, and those of you who have been in business understand completely that today I have more bosses than I've ever had in my life. And there's nothing worse than being a disappointment to one of your bosses. Every single customer that Comtrack works for is my boss. And you can tell 100 times in a year where someone will say, the switchboard will say, Mike, Joe is on the phone from ABC Company. And I'll go, oh, don't tell me. You're kidding. I know what Joe wants, because that particular day we might not have lived up to his expectation. But I always get a kick out of people that say, oh, they're going to be their own boss, they're going to do their own thing. I've canceled more vacations. I've made more promises to my family and my wife that had to be broken, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. When I say I'll be home at 6:30, everybody knows it's BS. It'll be about 7:30 or 8. Everybody understands that when you own your own business, you don't get to do what you want to do. You get to do what everybody tells you, and that's okay. Not knocking it, wouldn't have it any other way. But for those of you who didn't raise your hand and are coming to these meetings because you're kind of thinking about becoming your own business person, you need to understand that it's not the bowl of cherries that you may have heard. When we talk about the hours that we put in, we also have to talk about the paychecks. And one might think in owning your own business, that's a real way to get rich. And I can tell you that I take the last check. And if there ain't anything there, especially in the early days, today it's not that big a deal, but in the early days, there were plenty of weeks that went by where there was no paycheck. And I think that the key to a successful business, there's many keys, and we'll talk about that now, but one of the keys to a successful business is not to forget what happened in the early days. If you start taking things for granted, you start taking the big money for granted, you're going to go out of business. And I like to make sure in this company that we make sure that we do what's right, we do what works, and we don't change what works because we've gotten larger. And I'll give you an example. Right along this table on Tuesday and Wednesday is we have driver orientation. And they're brand new drivers, never worked for Comtrack. And drivers are hard to get in our business. That's one of our biggest challenges of growth, is to make sure that we can grow with the labor force. 21 years ago, I would meet a driver and we had a desk and a file cabinet and myself and a phone. And I would say to that driver, here's my home phone now. If you break down in the middle of the night, give me a call. 21 years later to this day, every single driver, I meet him, I shake his hand, I talk for an hour, and then he gets my home phone number. We have 700 guys that drive for this company that can call me at home anytime they want. I don't get any calls. I hardly ever get a call, 1 or 2 a month. And that's something I could get into about why that all works that way. And we can shelf that for a little bit later if you care to. But the point is that that works. It's one of those things that it's small, it works. It's not a big deal, but it does tend to help create the culture of the company. Because when you have 6 guys, a dozen guys sitting there across the table and saying, I I can't believe this guy just gave me his home phone number. This must be a company that works real well, and I'm not afraid to give it to them because I'm not going to get any calls. I have the best people in the business. So I think when we get to a point as a company evolves and it becomes successful, and the owners become big shots, and then his lieutenants become big shots, and everybody gets to be big shots, and nobody gets back down in the trenches, then we start to lose exactly what made us successful in the first place. This company does not have any big shots. Nobody's a big deal. I'm no better than anybody else in this company. Where you're sitting in the back there, that lunchroom is shared by drivers. It's shared by mechanics. It's shared by vice presidents. It's shared by office people. Who cares? I cannot stand signs that say, no drivers allowed, no mechanics over here. If you go down the hall, there's pictures of all people that have been here 10 years or more, and it's all mixed up. I'm the president, I'm the owner. I'm right next to the guy that washes the trucks for a living. Been here 10 years, he's right next to me. And I think that so many companies, once they forget their roots, and they say, well, we don't do that anymore. You know, remember when we used to do that? Well, we're big now. I think that there's some trade-offs as you get big because it's kind of necessary. But I tell my folks, when I say to the drivers, is there ever, they'll say, I'll say, do you have any questions? And that driver will say, Mike, how big do you guys want to get? What is your goal? What's your... And my answer is very simple. We will never get so big that when you say to me, can I see you for a minute? Can I talk to you for a minute? That I say no. We won't get that big. Now, we will never be as big as Hunt, Schneider, Swift. There are huge companies out there that do what we do. Very successful companies in business. We're never going to be that big. This is about 15 times bigger than I ever dreamed of, so I'm on a free ride now anyway. Who cares? So I think when we talk about success, we have to kind of measure in business what we are trying to achieve. What is success for me might be different than for Alice, or for Pat, or for Gary. It might be different. It doesn't make me right. It's just my personal thing. The success that we have enjoyed at 2track is a combination of not forgetting those things and moving forward and still having a direct line where I pick it up and I don't worry who's on the other end of the line. Having a home phone that could ring, could be a driver. But I think the biggest success is that the people we employ, and this is not some news flash for you folks. God, you all know you have to be so successful. But if you have good people, you can do anything you want. And I always get a kick about truck lines. When I go to conventions that are trucking conventions, they say, what kind of trucks are you running? I guess we got some freight liners. We got, really, you like freight? I don't know a thing about a freight liner. I don't know how to drive a truck. Okay? I don't know how to drive. I don't know how to fix a car. I don't know anything about trucks. But I know people a little bit, and if you hire good people, and you hire the people that know more than you do about stuff that you don't have a clue about, man, you can do a marvelous, you can be successful at what you're doing. And it's so there's a lot of owners and presidents that kind of have an ego such that they want to be in charge of everything. They want to know everything that's going on. They kind of get jealous that someone might be knowing a little bit or kind of smarter than they are in an area. Man, I love going to meetings where everybody is talking and solutions are coming down and we're kicking butt. And I really don't know a lot about what they're talking about, but I'll make sure that they're motivated to make even better decisions the next meeting. Because I don't know, Steve helped us out with our computer systems and whatnot. I got the best computer people in the whole wide world. I got the best operating people in the whole wide world. I got the best safety people, you name it. I got the best people. And my objective is to make sure they stay here and keep being the best at what they're doing. I don't really know all that they're doing or whatnot, but as long as I keep getting the best, we'll be successful. I think another approach to business is the long-term approach. Right now in our industry, these guys, one of these guys is a competitor, so if you see him starting to write stuff down, let me know. But I think that you have to have in business a long-term approach. In our business today, there are not enough drivers. I've said that before. It's such a problem. And it means that the freight rates are starting to move up. It means that people are wanting to do business with us. They can't get their freight moved. It means they're throwing dollars at us saying, hey, well, would you do it for this much? The short-term approach guy in business is, hey, we can make $1 more today than that guy. Why don't we dump and run? The long-term approach where we do business in this company says, these people brought us to the table. Now, they got to ante up as needed with the market. But to dump and run would be one of the stupid things, because I've been in business long enough to know one thing. It's all a cycle. What goes around comes around, blah, blah. We've heard all the expressions. And I'm going to be here for the next turnaround, okay? And I want to have and maintain the very same relationship. So people that get into business for the short term, quick buck, it's kind of nice for them, I suppose, but it doesn't last very long. I also mentioned on success in business, the working hard, no big shots. I can't emphasize that enough. I work today as hard as I did 21 years ago. I think that if you're involved and people see you, they want to work. I've had competitors that went down the tubes. They got to be reasonably successful, and then the excuse was, well, I can be in Florida in my summer home because we have email, I got a BlackBerry, I got a computer, I can run this thing from Florida. You can't run it from Florida. They need to see you. They need to feel you. They need to understand your compassion and how you're doing business. You can take all that technology and stick it. It's not going to change them seeing you every day, your mood, your swings, how you feel about the business. You can't substitute that. And it's okay that you go to Florida. I don't have any problem with people that have summer homes in Florida and have a great time. But don't expect your business to be a reflection of the way you think if you're down there because you have a BlackBerry. It ain't going to happen. I think that one of the things I am good at, not good at a lot, but one of the things I am good at is having a blast. We have a lot of fun in this company. And I think when you come to work and you get to go home at night and tell stories and jokes and just have a good time, I think that's real important because, one, I like to have a good time, but two, I think that an employee that is happy is productive. And you'd be surprised how you can retain employees if they all got smiles on their face. You can really get customers feeling that they have that empathy on the other end of the line, the other end of the email. I can remember, the railroad will remain anonymous, but the railroad was going to save a bunch of money, and they cut free coffee out. They cut it out. No more free coffee. Now you're talking about a $9 billion railroad was going to save some money on a cup of coffee for their employees. And it was the best thing that ever happened because I owed this railroad about $35,000 in questionable money. Yeah, you owe it, nah, no we don't, back and forth. Boy, when they cut that coffee out, we got the money. I'll write a check, Mike, I'll approve it. Hey, give me a minute here, I'm approving it right now. If they can't even buy me a cup of coffee, the heck with them. That was the best cup of coffee. But that's a true story, and it's a perfect example. What the heck they could possibly save by cutting out the coffee? Come on, man, there's got to be bigger fish to fry. And to the opposite side of that same story, there's people out there right now that will go to you-know-where and back for $10 because it's our money, it's their money, it's my money, it's everyone's money, and they're not going to give it in. So they gave up 35 G's because of coffee, and we have folks that say, it ain't going to happen, you ain't getting the money, you didn't do the thing right, or whatever the case might be. So people will take a personal ownership in their company. If you do have success in business, and if you want to kind of parlay that success into more success, I think that there's a couple of responsibilities. One of the responsibilities is to the community. One of the responsibilities is to yourself. On the community side, I think that successful businesses do a lot of things. They provide leadership. You kind of got to behave. You know, you got to start behaving. If you're out in public, you kind of got people would look at that. You know, that guy. You won't see Fred Smith stumbling drunk too many times. Okay. The guy's got a lot of responsibility when he goes out beyond Federal Express. Obviously, we present or provide, I mean, a lot of employment. There's a lot of responsibility that goes with that. I think part of that responsibility is that you need to be involved within your own organization, the industry. I've served in a lot of offices as officers and a lot of trade groups and whatnot. Some were good, some were selfishly motivated, and some were because I needed to. If you become involved and you're running a decent business, there's some of the things that go with it. You gotta put your dues in. You can't just sit back fat, dumb, and happy and let everybody else do all the work. And we've all been on task forces and committees, and you go to the things and you're wondering what you're doing there. That's part of the deal, man. If you're going to take something out of the industry, you got to put something back into it. That's my opinion. And I do think that it's probably all worth it. I do think, though, that when you're, in addition to your own industry, I think you have to put back into the community. And I think that it is a wonderful thing for people to give back to the community because it satisfies a need that all of us have, but to varying degrees. But even if you're not the biggest giver or the biggest person in the world that feels like you have to give back, you probably have people that work for you that need that. So even if you're not that type of person, so what? That doesn't make you a bad guy or gal. But it's been proven that people who want to become involved in community work, the best way to do it is through their employment. They want to, but they don't know how. So when you're as an employer, if your company becomes involved in something, and there's a million of them out there to be involved in, all of a sudden the people that always wanted to volunteer, always wanted to be involved in something, finally have an avenue by which to do it. As was mentioned earlier, youth villages, God knows we're involved in youth villages. And I made a terrible mistake with that involvement. I kept it to myself for many, many years. I wouldn't go out to board meetings, you name it. I was at a meeting all the time, but I never really shared what I was up to. And I'm speaking from experience. Once I told everyone and kind of involved the company, everybody wants to be involved in youth villages. Everybody fights to be involved in something, and we have other charities and nonprofits that we work with. But I could not believe the stored up, pent up demand for people that wanted to become involved with stuff that didn't know how to do it. And I think it was very important. So there was a couple things that happened there. One, they were satisfied. And it was cool. It was real good to have an employee that was satisfied about becoming involved in things. Two, kind of made the company look good. Not the motive, but when you have a company that's involved in neat stuff, it sends a signal. It sends a signal to the employees. It sends a signal to prospective employees that say, boy, I'd like to work for a company that's kind of involved with people. When you take that even further and your involvement becomes nationally known, whether it's on trailers or in publications or whatnot, customers want to do business for you. You would be surprised how many times I've gotten a rate increase because I said I needed more money for charity. It's a nice sell. People say, well, I was going to give you the 5%, but just make it 6%, but I want some of that money going. And we do that. We don't hoard the money, by the way. But I mean, what could be a better sell? And it has nothing to do with trucking, but everything to do with money. And it works. Don't keep the money if you use that approach. You got to make sure you share it. But I think that it sends a wonderful signal about the culture of the company, and it's a wonderful way for companies to look good in the community, and that's very important. As far as the responsibility to your personal life, I think first of all, everyone in this room has got to determine what they mean by success. They say, boy, you're really successful. I hear that, and it's kind of like, that doesn't mean nothing. I've told this story once or twice before, but when I went to our 30th class reunion, my wife and I graduated from the same school in Chicago. And we were given a sheet that had to fill out all the neat things we did and how many trophies we won in bowling. I mean, it was just ridiculous. And all this accomplishments and filling it out. And we were looking at it and kind of laughing about it. Well, we had one line under our names when we went up there. There was 500 and some odd people in our graduating class. But we went up to the reunion up in Chicago, and there's a book, you know, you'd walk in, everybody get their book, and you'd open it up, and oh man, people had huge paragraphs. There were some really important people. I had no idea that this guy had had a hole-in-one in 1978. We had one line under each of our names: raised 2 great kids. That's what we did, and so that's the deal, and that's our deal. That doesn't make it the best deal, but that's our deal. So I think when you're trying to determine what success is, that's your own thing, and there's no one that can question that. It's your own thing. And if success is hitting 100 million in revenue, or 40 million in revenue, or raising 2 great kids, that's cool. It doesn't make any difference, but you need to determine that. And the reason I mention that is because once you determine that, then you can follow the course that best suits you. One of my favorite guys I look up to in business was Lee Iacocca. And when he was interviewing, when he left Ford, he went over to Chrysler, trying to build this company back up. He was interviewing some real dudes and trying to build his team. And the one guy came in and he thought he had a pretty good plan on how to sell Lee on hiring him. And he had told Lee that he had not had a day off in 4 years, and he hadn't even taken a vacation. And kind of figuring that old Lee would say, that's the kind of guy I want, a guy that's going to put Chrysler #1. And Lee said, I'm sorry. He said, do you have a family? He said, yeah, I got a family. He said, well, I'm sorry, I don't need you. He says, anybody that can't budget their time with their family better than that, I don't think you're valuable to me. See? And I think there's a lot to be said for that. One of the questions that was asked of me to bring up here was, how do you balance personal and business? And I don't have it down to a science, because earlier I said I've canceled. I've had to do some cancellations. I've had to change things and whatnot. But I think the important thing is to, one, determine where they fit into the scheme of things. If you're a single person and your career is the deal, cool, man, do the deal. If you have a family and they mean to you X amount to you, or so much time to you, then you got to treat them just like a business client. At the beginning of the year, when I had 2 small children and they were, and I was coaching soccer, I coached Chris's kid 100 years ago. I didn't miss any practices. I didn't miss any games. I didn't, because I blocked it out. That was important. It was January, whenever we'd get our schedule, Chris, and that was blocked out. That didn't mean I never, ever had to change it. But if I book a lunch or a dinner with a very important client, it doesn't mean I won't have to change it either. It doesn't mean it's ironclad, but you need to determine on the front end, because if you are one of the people that I have met on airplanes for 21 years that sit there and talk about how they wish they had done the deal, how they wish they had spent more time with their kids, how they wish they hadn't gotten divorced 3 times because they're never home, all that stuff. I'm not making a judgment on anybody. I'm just saying that those people allowed the business to run them, and they gave out to themselves or their family whatever fell to the bottom. And whatever falls to the bottom ain't a good way to do it, if that's what you want. It's up to you. I mean, like I say, I'm not preaching here that I have all the answers, but I can tell you that when I book the deal, it's a book deal. And when I have grandkids now, they get booked in there. And there ain't much more important than that, in my opinion. We always see these public officials, they're always resigning to spend more time with their family. I'm not sure whether that's an excuse or not, but it seems to me that an awful lot of them have missed the boat and you can't get it back. So that would be my advice there. There is a barometer by which you can find out whether or not you're doing well with your commitment. I used to do it before there was voicemails and all that, but you can still do it now. If you're at a seminar all morning, when you leave here, you're going to have voicemails. If you've got voicemails, but in the beginning of the year, you committed, you said, I'm going to spend more time with my personal self, with my wife, my kids, whatever I'm doing, but I still got this business. I really got those goals that I laid out. If you leave here and you got 4 voicemails, and 1 of them is your family and 3 of them are business, who gets first crack? So that's kind of a nice way to measure where they're fitting, how you're doing with your commitment. And sometimes my wife will fall to last place because I know I didn't get done what she said she was going to do, what I promised to get done, and I don't want to hear it. So she will go to last. But I think that's a nice way to kind of figure out, you know, you said you were going to do better, you did the deal. And if you got 17 voicemails to return and they're the last ones to get the call, you probably ain't doing real well in your deal. But I am not here to make judgments about that because I'm not perfect at it either. But those are kind of the, that's kind of a recap, I think, what you wanted me to cover. And I welcome questions. I'm real honored to be in front of y'all. I really mean that. I don't have all the answers. There's plenty of people that are a hell of a lot more successful than I would be, but I still think it always gets back to what do you want to be? You know, what is success? So I'll end it there. If there's questions now.
Please, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yes. Any questions?
Ward?
What is the biggest challenge you face in trying to find the right people at the top of you to hire?
It's getting harder. I mentioned this on Monday night. I've changed all the rules on that. What I've done, when I say I've changed the rules, it used to be 100 years ago, no relatives, no friends, none of that. We ain't going to do that stuff. We're not going to have a case where you get mad at this one and then this one gets mad because this one wants to go on vacation and they're married to this one. I wouldn't do that. Today, those rules are all out the door. If I got somebody good and they have a good friend, generally speaking, you don't hang with good people, hang with good people. Generally, good dads have good kids, whatever the case may be. And so we have opened it up now where we will we'll take you. If you're a relative, if you're a friend. Now, that doesn't make it all easy. The other thing we've done lately, more so than not, is we're not relying on as much experience as we used to. Good people are hard to find. People that want to show up for work. I mean, I can teach you trucking. We happen to be in a very easy business. You pick a load up here and you deliver it here. And it's not a big deal. But if you're a good person, you're responsible, you're loyal, you're dependable, now that's getting hard to find. So we'll take that person and put them in the mix, and that kind of broadens it out. So experience, now on the technical side, Steve, that kind of makes it a little rougher. But we're looking for good people. So, I don't know if that answered your question. Yes, sir.
When you decided to start a business, did you have a direction that you knew you wanted to take, or did you believe in setting the rules, writing your rules, objectives, goals?
Nah, I wish I could give you a cool answer there. My deal was I didn't have a job. I mean, some people say I moved down here with a company that was to move me here. I was to do real well, and then they promised I'd come back to Chicago if I just did a little tour of duty for a couple of years. And they bellied up. And when that happens, people say, man, you risked everything. I didn't risk nothing. I didn't have nothing. So don't get into this. You laid it all on the line. Boy, no, I didn't have anything. And my biggest goal was to make payroll on Friday. I borrowed money from friends and whatnot. And but no, I wish I could, no, totally unorganized. Totally not unorganized. I mean, I had a lot of experience, but no, I wish I could give you a better answer, but kind of lucky. Okay, Alice?
I was in the mentoring group the other night. There were two things you talked about that I carried away that I think is worth repeating for the group. One of them was you were talking about good people and some of the ways you motivate and some of the ways you bring everybody in, like your Christmas parties and your little surprises. Mm-hmm. And the other thing was when you talked about cost versus investment.
Okay. You want me to talk about each of those? Okay. On the people side, motivating people is really, there's volumes in libraries about it, so I don't have any inside track on motivating people. I will tell you, however, that, and most of you already have learned this, that money is not the deal, especially in our industry. I used to watch people in meetings, and well, let's give them another nickel a mile, or let's pay them to unload the trailer $100 instead of $70, whatever. That's not the deal. I also get a kick out of people that will say on motivation, well, what motivates a driver? It's the same thing that motivates Alice's waitresses and waiters and cooks. There's no secret. You weren't going, hey, look at this. Okay, he's 6 pounds, 8 ounces, and he looks like he'll be a driver. He's a human being, for Christ's sake. I mean, there's no big deal to this. And that people that, oh, you don't understand our industry, or that's a bunch of crap. The fact is, they're people. People are people. What motivates me with this necktie on today is the same thing that motivates the guy behind the wheel. We like to be appreciated. We like to be recognized. We like to feel good about our job. We like to feel important. We like to feel helpful. The list goes on, and if you're able to satisfy those things, it's real easy. Not easy, but I mean it makes it easier. I write notes. I was telling them on Monday, I have a stack of birthday cards and anniversary cards that I get the 1st of every month. Actually, it's like the 15th because it's for the next month. And when I get put on hold, that's my job. I got the hand, and I have sticky pads, and it's Bob Smith. And with someone will have written a note that Bob is the one that Bob thanks again for. And then it's a card, and it's 37 cents, and it comes in the mail, and he's a big shock to his wife, and his kids thinks he's, and he is important. That's not my point, but that was 37 cents, man. You know how much mileage you get out of that? When I was in Chicago, I met a guy. When I started, I was in sales in Chicago. This is 1970-something. And I had a reunion with another trucker that I used to compete with. And he's, Mike Bruns, I ain't seen you in 25 years. And I go, how you doing? And he was the kingpin in the industry. He's the guy that had all the freight. He was the guy that looks like me now. And boy, I used to hate competing with you. He's every dang place I'd go in, there'd be some note you wrote thanking somebody for the freight they gave you. And he said, I couldn't sell. He'd be the guy with the bottle of whiskey and the scratch pads. Back then, that's how you used to get business. You'd kind of buy it. I never bought any business. I just, hey man, thanks. And, I mean, that's not a big deal, and we all know that thank you notes and that kind of a thing, or phone calls, but I think that people are always looking for the hot button to get away with how they can motivate people, and it's really not that big a deal, and I'm still learning. I mentioned that I took Denise back there, in the room back there, that's where most people eat lunch. And in the table, it's a big long conference table, there's glass top, and underneath the glass top is pictures, and all the pictures are all the terminals that we go to during the Christmas season. I go to breakfast in Houston, lunch in Dallas, dinner in every single terminal. And all the wives are there, all the children are there, all the drivers are there. And now the driver gets up and he's getting a safety award with his children and his family, and it's a family thing. Anyway, I take the pictures. All those pictures are then put under glass for the Memphis terminal, and each terminal they have their own glass. It's to remind the guy in March when he comes in, he's had a bad day and he wants to quit contract. There's the picture, you know, as he's doing his homework or thinking about leaving, that it's not such a bad place to work. Constantly reminding the efforts that we put forth. But those are the things that I think help to motivate. There's a long list of them, I think, but what was the other one?
The cost versus...
Oh, the cost. I don't know whether this is a part of a evolution of one's business or not, but I used to run this business based on what things cost. Well, we ain't gonna spend that, that's $50,000. We ain't gonna spend that, that's $500 back when. And there was a transition that took place that I began to look at what things were from an investment standpoint, not what it cost. The biggest difference is in our computers. Steve can tell you, who helped us immensely with his help, that what the amount of money that we needed to spend in the old days, I'd say, we ain't gonna, did you hear what that cost? I don't even think about it. I mean, you need to, but can you, I think the thing that you have to focus in on is, can you imagine what that would do for us? And our company, and Cat or anyone else, we just run trucks around. I mean, trucks are trucks, it's no big deal. But information, that's the deal, and it's, I don't care, even when you're waitresses putting that ticket in, how fast can that food come back out? And if it's done with a computer, it's a heck of a lot faster than a piece of paper. We all know that. So I don't care what business you're in, fixing kids, you gotta have it under control. And so that's the best example of where I was able to move from cost to investment. Yes, sir.
You mentioned the evolution of your business. After you got established, after you broke even, you were at a comfortable point. Comfort level may say, stop. I mean, I don't need to grow anymore. On the other hand, another part of you says, I want to plan for growth. What does that growth do for me? So forth. Can you talk about some of those decision points of different plateaus that you obviously went through?
Yeah. Well, there's two things on that. One, at least in my mind. First, you got to grow. The guy that says, I like it just like it is, he's out. I mean, he ain't punched his ticket yet, but he's out. Because next year, our insurance is going to cost more today. Our banking service is going to charge more today. Our drivers are going to want more money than they... I can go down the whole litany of the P&L and tell you every line item is going to go up, in most cases. So you got to stay ahead of that. You can't just sit there and say, all these employees want more money. I mean, and it's fair, they deserve it, but you can't just say, well, we're only growing, we're going to stay right like we are because this is great. Forget it. You got to grow. The percentage by which you grow is anybody's guess which the best number is. We've grown about 15 to 20% every year. The other reason for growth, and the reason I'm constantly out in front, is I got a bunch of people in this company that need to be challenged. They got to grow. I got to stay ahead of them. And sometimes, quite honestly, to answer your question, I would like a year where I didn't have to stay ahead of them and run ahead of them. But I've got lieutenants and captains or whatever you want to call them that, man, they need more to chew on. They got to get going. And back to the motivation thing, I guess one could say, well, I'll give them 10,000 more a year and that'll make them happy. Well, for about a day, they got to get going. And so I have to grow, we all have to grow to stay ahead of them or they're going to get bored and they're going to bail out. And I don't want them to bail out. They're too valuable. So people will say to me, man, you know, when you opened up Memphis in 1983, how come you opened Birmingham next? Why was Birmingham? And I'll tell you why, and it kind of ties back into my point 20 years ago, is because I had two number 2 guys. There was me, number 1, and 2 guys were both number 2. And I knew I had a problem. So I opened up Birmingham. Why did I pick Birmingham? Because this guy's roots were from Birmingham. That's the big deal there. But my point, yeah, real scientific. But my point in that story is that the reason I grew to Birmingham was I was going to lose one of them at some point. It wasn't because I wanted to necessarily go to her. I had no aspiration to make more money, blah, blah. So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it does, because it sounds like there's a certain momentum that carries you along, some of which you're pushing, but also you're being pulled.
No question about that. Yes, sir.
Do you have an employee ownership plan?
No. No. Right now it's 100%. That is an interesting issue since I am 100% and I have no children involved by all of our choices. Very good kids, but I didn't want them in our business because that's one thing I don't believe in. But there's successful businesses out there. They're 3rd and 4th generation. But I do have to. I don't know what I'm going to do. To answer that question, I don't know what I'm going to do. I got to figure out how to someday get out of here. And I do want, my goal would be to create a lot of millionaires here before I do that. So.
What was your turning point year, do you feel like, Mike, as far as you started in 83, so this is 21 years old, so, I mean, how long did it take you before you started to feel like that A, you made it, B, then kind of reaching that next level? Maybe it ties on that other question a little bit. I don't know the size of your company, so I'm not sure where you got these revenue points, but when did you really feel like you were,
I don't think we ever,
a year that strikes you at developing the company?
I don't think we ever felt that way, still don't, but I understand what your point of the question is. And I would say that a turning point had nothing to do with, okay, if we get to 10 million, we've made it, or we get to 30 million, we've made it. The turning point happened in this company in the year 2000. In the year 2000, we were doing $50 million a year in revenue. And in that year when we did $50 million in revenue, the Burlington Northern Railroad was $18 million in that business. And that left 32 that was not them. Terrible management 101 says don't do that. You know, I did it because it just happened. The Burlington Northern Railroad came to contract and said, we're out of here. We're going to get in bed with the Norfolk Southern Railroad and we won't need you anymore, Mike. The turning point in the business was then in 2000 that we lost 1/3 of our business, didn't lay anyone off, kicked butt, came back, and are stronger today than we ever were. That was the turning point because it proved what we could do. We had been fat, dumb, and happy, kind of getting, hey, yeah, this is easy, and then woof. Right to us, took our knees out. They loved us, by the way. It wasn't by choice, but it was a great move for them. But when you're faced with losing 1/3 of your business, and I'll tell you something else, that particular business, we did $18 million a year with them. They paid us $1 million up front before we hauled a load, and then at the end of the month we tell them how much more we owed them. they owed us. Talk about cash flow. Somebody giving you $1 million up front, you ain't even started the work yet. So not only did we lose the revenue, but we lost the cash flow, and we made it. Didn't borrow any money, still debt-free. But that was the turning point. That showed everyone in this company, you know what, anything we do get, we deserve, because we know how to roll our sleeves up when we really have.
And you replace that revenue with other accounts.
Correct.
Mike, thank you so
Okay, well,
very much.
no. This is when you get the big gift here.
So I told him, I said, but it's not fried chicken, sorry. So that's what we talked about on Monday. But anyway, thank you so much. And Mike will be available to give some tours, I think, right after now?
If y'all,
and hang around here for a few seconds.
There's nothing to see, really.
That's not true. Here's the table, whatever. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
What attracted me to this just give you an example. Dad started and 20,000 tractors.